Good morning, Grace Tribe. Hope you all are doing wonderfully this morning. Good morning, Doug and Kat. And I assume that's Corey. He always shows up as Facebook user. So anonymous. But I think that's Corey. Lori, great to see you. Lynn, good to see you this morning. Rob Roke giving me the 5x5 for loud and clear. Thank you. Marlo, good morning to you, my friend. I always see your comments, but I know you can't always make it live, or at least I don't see you always live. So wonderful to see you. Thanks for being here. Diana, good to see you this morning. I don't think y'all realize the blessing it is to me. Becca, great to see you. The blessing it is to me to see you guys coming together and chatting with one another, just engaging in life together. Danya, good morning. Steve, good morning. Donna Swigert, good morning. Kathy, good morning. Great to see you. Dennis, thank you for being here. Good morning to you, my friend. Tabby, wonderful to see you. I was a little concerned before we got started that I had missed you this morning, so I'm glad to see you. Kat, good morning. Susan, good morning. Wonderful. Listen, if you see someone that you know, say hi. Janine, good morning to you. Feel free to chat with them. And if you see someone that you don't know, then say hi to them as well. This is the advantage of being here live. How do I unfollow or unfriend you? I have no idea, Kim. I doubt that you have friended me, but I can certainly look at that when we get off. I'd be happy to do that for you. But this is not a personal page, so I have no idea why you are saying so. But I hate to see you go. But I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards, or see if I can somehow do that. Not sure how you even saw me if you wanted to unfriend me. Kat Horton, great to see you. Kathy, great to see you. Good morning, everyone, she says. Wonderful. Pray for them. Please do. Thank you, Tabby. Lou, good morning to you. Danya, good morning to you. Listen, we often, not often, but occasionally find ourselves, because of the expansion of just the impact that you guys are having by participating here. 1,000 people almost every single day participating by the time we start the next broadcast. Several hundred during the live broadcast, and sometimes as many as 1,000 or 1,300 during the day. Good morning, Lenore. Great to see you. We're going to brush up against some folks that don't always want to be participating. And so that's okay. That's okay. In order to reach people that God will bless through our engagement together, we're going to come in contact with some folks that don't want to be a part of that engagement. And so that's okay. What we're doing is not for everyone, but we don't want to miss those whom it is for. But I'm glad that many of y'all are here. We're going to talk today about this idea of beauty. What is beautiful? What is beautiful? What does it mean that something is beautiful? Y'all have any thoughts about that? What is beauty? Susan says, glad you can't literally see me. I'm in my pajamas. Well, I have been on my pajamas on this broadcast before. Internet is out, Tabitha is saying, for 4 days, so you haven't been able to get in unless you were in town. Oh, I see. Well, I'm glad you're here. Kim, great to see you. Unconditional love is beautiful. I agree with that. What else is beautiful? Have y'all seen or heard or done anything recently that you would go, that's beautiful? I remember the first time I saw an Ansel, literally, nature is beautiful, Becca says. Not beautiful, Susan says. I would beg to differ, Susan. Not that I know you that well that I've ever seen your pajamas, but I think often the very things that we are self-conscious about have a beauty about them, because we're only self-conscious about something that is vulnerable, and something that is vulnerable by its very nature is beautiful. Tab says, love sees everything as beautiful. God made all things beautiful. I think there's great truth to that. Rich says, songwriting is beautiful. Absolutely. Sunset, Cat says, is beautiful. Absolutely. How would you define something that is beautiful? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yes, but it is not only in the eye of the beholder. When we see the eyes of the Lord, it's beautiful. That's true. Humbled by the beauty of your new home. Diana, that's awesome. That is excellent. My backyard garden is beautiful. I love that, Susan. I was going to say, I remember the very first time I saw an Ansel Adams photograph. And it was very large. It was blown up on, I think it was on a canvas, or it was just a large print. And it was framed, and it was on a display wall. And I was young, not real young, but younger, probably college age, I think. And I remember, maybe I was in high school. Anyway, I remember thinking it was just breathtaking. And it was blown up pretty large. He does these large format, black and white, not always black and white, but he does do a lot of black and white landscape photographs in large format. So very high resolution cameras. And it was inspiring. Something about how well it was composed and put together, and what the subject was of the photo. And now I know what it was. It's a photo of the Snake River. I think it's in the Grand Tetons. I know the image. I think that's what it's of. And it was breathtaking. It was an interruption in my own thinking. It was something that he captured, that he saw, that he wanted to express. But it was more than what he saw, because he wouldn't have seen it in black and white. And what he wanted to express was going to show up better in black and white. So he was trying to show us something about the high contrast shape of what he was seeing, and doing that in black and white accentuated what he was wanting to communicate. So it wasn't a true to life photo, or it couldn't have been in black and white. It was a specifically composed, specifically colored representation of what he wanted to express. So the one who made that photo, Ansel Adams, saw something he wanted to share, but it was very specific. He wanted to share something from the landscape that, frankly, I might miss if I were looking at the landscape myself. So he took it using specific equipment at a specific time of day, and portrayed it in a specific way, so that I would see something that he saw, so that he could stir in me something that was stirred in him. And decades after he took that photo, I think it was probably 3 decades after he took it, I don't know exactly, I was stirred by what he wanted to share. After he shared it, after he had that desire. Beautiful Spirit, Kim says there were some great comments there. I just didn't want to interrupt the thought. He wanted to create something that communicated something from his heart to mind that I would miss apart from him doing it. And so he created this beautiful thing that stirred my emotion. Beauty is dependent upon our state of mind, Lenore. That is well said. I can hear, and you can too, hear beauty in something, or see beauty in something that under other circumstances would be disturbing. And yet under the circumstances, I hear it as beautiful. I remember when my daughter was born, her soft little, well, it wasn't completely soft, but her infant cry was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard in my life. But there were times in the middle of the night, not long after that moment, that cry was like nails on a chalkboard, right? When you haven't slept for 2 weeks, and the baby is crying. She was very colicky. She was pretty miserable, and so it disturbed me for her and for me, right? She was hurting and communicating something in her crying later, and I was disturbed by her pain. It still could be considered beautiful, but it went from beautiful to torture. What's beauty? What makes something beautiful. So I think all of your examples are great, and I'm excited to go back and read some of the ones that I missed of things that are beautiful. But why are they beautiful? Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Jessica. Glad that you are here. Why was that picture that Ansel Adams shot beautiful? Why is the music that I grew up hearing and trying to play? You see, it's communicating something that I want to then capture and communicate my way, something about me. If I wanted you to hear great music, I could just send you a link to, a Bach cello sonata. But if I wanted to learn how to play that on my instrument so that I could express it in my way, it's because I want to share something about me by doing something that's beautiful. If someone paints a portrait, when Ansel Adams took that photo that I was talking about earlier of the landscape, he wasn't trying to communicate what he saw. He was trying to communicate what he felt. Otherwise, he would have tried to capture it as closely to what his eyes saw as possible. But instead, he did it in black and white. He composed it where you could only see what he wanted us to see, and he displayed something about how he felt about what was in front of him. So he wasn't just expressing how beautiful the landscape was. He was trying to capture and express something that he felt about the landscape. So you see, art and beauty is communicating something to us about someone. I've tried to define beauty, and it's really hard to do. So not just talking about things that are beautiful, but why are they beautiful? So what is beauty? Not just things that are beautiful, but what is beauty? Frank says beauty is the love Christ has for us, expressed in an infinite number of ways. In fact, you could almost say that you and I are part of that expression. As his creation, we speak of him as our creator. We are making him known just by our sheer existence. So one might say that beauty is that which is aesthetically pleasurable, right? To see it or experience it, to smell it, to hear it. We sense something of its aesthetic quality. If I smell a skunk today, or I smell fresh cut flowers today, they have a very different effect on me. One is beautiful and one is terrible, almost intolerable. Isn't that interesting? If we had, a sewage line break, I wouldn't be going, that's beautiful. I'd be going, oh, get me out of here. It's going to make me sick. And yet I could see wildflowers on the roadside, and somehow I'm inspired internally by what I'm experiencing through the senses externally. When I hear Eddie Daniels play his breakthrough CD on clarinet, he's playing classical music through a jazz format in his unique instrumentation with his unique gifting. And it speaks of this unique combination of him and the music that he didn't write the original of, but his unique expression of that music with his instrumentation in the period that he wrote it, right? It speaks of the period because he wouldn't play it the same way now that he played it, whatever that was, 30 years ago when he created it. I hear that and I go, that's beautiful. When I hear a Beethoven symphony, I hear something of what was happening in his time and something that was happening in him that he is then capturing and expressing with his unique gifting. But you cannot separate Mozart from all that he wrote. You cannot separate Ansel Adams from the photos that he takes. So it's not just something that is aesthetically pleasing, it's something that is expressing aesthetically something about the creator of that thing to the audience that he intends. When Stacey and I got married, I was a huge jazz fan. She was not. She was a huge country fan. Huge might be an overstatement. Really enjoyed country music. She grew up on a farm with her family all listening to country music, and I had very little appreciation for that. So when we got married, I didn't really like it when she wanted to listen to country, and she didn't really like it when I want to listen to jazz. Now I'll come home, and about half the time she's playing jazz music, and she's been shocked on occasion to hop in my car to drive somewhere, and there's country music playing, though I'm often looking for music that she likes. Like I'm looking for songs that she might like. But you see, that spoke of me, and she learned to appreciate it in part because of me. What is beautiful is not just aesthetically pleasurable, but it's someone communicating something in an aesthetically pleasurable way. I really did try to define this. Think about what makes something beautiful. I said the aggregate qualities of a person or thing or process, something perceived through the physical senses. It can smell beautiful, taste beautiful, sound beautiful, obviously look beautiful. So it's perceived through the physical senses that exalts something beyond the senses. So it exalts the mind or spirit with a positive or pleasurable emotion. It connects from our external reality with something of an internal awareness of ourselves, right? That I think it's beautiful speaks of me. Or engages one with a heightened sense of something that resonates beyond us and within us. It's something beyond us perceived through the senses that resonates within us. Isn't that interesting? Because right now, there's a beautiful landscape somewhere that I'm not seeing. Is it beautiful without me looking at it? Well, it's not beautiful unless someone is looking at it, right? Beauty requires an audience. An artist is trying to communicate something through whatever gifting they have, is communicating something of themselves, of their perceptions to an audience. I think beauty is an invitation of God to recognize something about Him that resonates within us. Let me say that again. I believe that beauty is an invitation from God to recognize Him within His creation. And the way that we recognize Him, something from Him that resonates within us, right? To recognize Him within His creation. We recognize that by seeing or hearing or tasting, by sensing something of Him within that which He created, but also within us. If I'm hiking along and I come to a precipice and I see the beauty and grandeur of that scene, a moment ago I was huffing and puffing and striving and hurting, and suddenly I'm interrupted by the beauty of creation. And it changes my perspective. Something within me is responding to something of God from outside of me. It's an invitation to be aware of something from the Creator within the created. All beauty makes us aware of something both within us and beyond us. It is communicating something outside of us that resonates with something inside of us. All beauty speaks of something else and of ourselves somehow. It's something engaging from someone else through our circumstances to us, about them and us. You cannot look at a Monet and not see something of both the artist and us as his audience. He is not communicating what he sees to no one. So that it is beautiful speaks both of what is being communicated emotionally from the artist, but it says something about us as recognizers as recipients of what he is communicating. All beauty makes us aware of something both within us and beyond us. It's God's invitation to recognize him within him as the creator, right? In his creation. By seeing something or sensing something, a child's laughter, seeing or sensing something of the creator within that which he created that speaks to us from him, but in part about us. So it exalts our awareness of the grandeur of something within us and beyond us. So it's always awe-inspiring. Beauty is always, it's not just a pleasurable aesthetic. I can walk into a room that's well organized, but it says something about me that I think it's well organized. This is a pleasing place to sit. I like this chair. It's well designed. Well, that speaks of the talent of the designer, but it also speaks of me, that I like something they designed. I'm connected to that which the person that roasted this coffee had me in mind. That says something about his ability and my tastes. All art speaks to the heart, and the heart is being whispered to by the external reality around us to the internal reality we might not have even been aware of. All beauty makes us aware of something both within us and beyond us. God's gifts, listen, God's gifts are not just beautiful in and of themselves. They are that, but they're not just that. But God's gifts are somehow recognizing and engaging the beauty of his gifts as he's speaking both of us and of him. Of course, his gifts, his sunset is beautiful. But do you see that speaks of something of me that I like it and something of him that he wanted me to. Do you see that? Peach anything. Me too, Rob. I love peach anything. Stay with me, guys. God is speaking not just to us, but he's speaking of him and of us, or we wouldn't find it beautiful. Michael Elliott is saying, how do we respond to the creator about him and about me? So how do we respond to beauty, that personal touch? Can we see him differently? Absolutely. So the power of, maybe you've never thought about this, but the power of kind of contemporary art, or even its predecessor in Impressionism, is that we are being stirred emotionally by something that is slightly, or at least slightly ambiguous aesthetically. So it can speak to our emotions without being as clear. So what you see in an impressionistic painting is going to be a little different than what I see, because what is trying to be expressed by Monet or Van Gogh, what they're trying to express is emotional, not just an object. So they're not trying to give us the symmetry of the architecture of a building. They're trying to give us an expression of the emotion that they're feeling looking at the light coming out of the building, or the color that is being expressed by the gestalt, the wholeness of the scene before them. They're expressing what they feel, not what they see, because they don't want us to miss what we might walk by every single day at that building. In other words, if I went and saw the cafe where Van Gogh painted his scene of a cafe, I will now see that cafe differently because I've seen his painting of it. I will see something of what he saw. I'll want to see it with the lamp lights on at night with a few people on the patio, because that's what I see in the painting. I want to see what he saw because of what he's shown me of how he felt. Do you know that Vincent van Gogh hated most of what he painted? He always felt like a failure. And the reason wasn't because it wasn't wonderful art. He was already recognized as a great artist in his lifetime. The reason he was so frustrated is because he didn't feel like he could communicate what he was feeling by what he was seeing. To recognize beauty, my friends, is to recognize God. There's a creator, and in his artistry, he is sharing something with us of himself as the creator and us as his audience. Have you ever thought that the sunsets are not made beautiful because God needs beauty? He's wanting to communicate something to us of beauty. In other words, it speaks of him. In fact, Paul, when writing to the Romans, well, let me just say this: all art declares the heart of the artist. There is no beauty apart from us recognizing something about the one who is expressing through that beauty. Paul said in Psalm 19, David said in Psalm 19 that the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. You cannot see beauty and mistake it for an accident. You have to work really hard to see beauty and ignore the artistry and deliberation of it. You have to work really hard to ignore the artist. No paintings have ever been hung in a museum by accident. It's not the cumulative impact of infinite possibility. It's not random that suddenly you walk into a museum and there happens to be art on the wall. Someone had to create it. Someone else had to appreciate it. Someone framed it. Someone hung it. Someone had to commit resources to it. It was by great effort that every work of art was ever put on any wall. We have a stairwell where we have put photos of family, and all of the things that had to happen in order for those photos to get made and get placed, and what it then creates as you walk up our stairs is more than the sum of just the parts of each individual photo or each individual experience. It inspires an entire expression of identity of those people as they were captured, as they're organized, of us. You cannot walk up our stairs without a sense of something much greater than just the moment that we are walking in, because it's the photos of all of our family arranged in a specific way that speak of something much greater than any of those photos or anybody who walks up our stairs. It's this bigger deal than what we're going through in the moment on the staircase. It's art. That's why we play music. That's why we write poetry. That's why we paint paintings and take photos, because we want to express something of the emotion that is beyond just the sum of the circumstances. In Psalm 19, David writes that not only the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. To recognize the artistry is to recognize the artist. You cannot say it's beautiful without working really hard to deny the one who created that beauty, because I already know that the sun is moving, and I already know that there are a myriad of colors in creation, and yet I am struck by how they are put together to express beauty. That requires artistry, requires an artist. Day after day, he says in Psalm 19, verse 2, he says, day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. God knows and is communicating something of what he knows, something about himself. They have no speech, verse 3 says. They use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. God is using creation to speak to us in creation of him as the creator. For a moment, my friends, we get to receive God by faith, but he is not silently hoping that we imagine him. He is speaking to us and it takes more work to ignore. Can you imagine going through a museum and trying to keep your head down and not see the art and the artistry so that you can get out the other side and deny that there's such a thing as beauty, such a thing as artistry? Can you imagine how someone must go to, listen to Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, which is, I think, his sixth symphony, and trying to plug their ears and close their eyes so that they can deny Beethoven ever existed? That takes a lot more work than sitting there recognizing differently for everybody something that artistry communicates. And if we will receive it, then what we receive speaks both of the art itself of music. We learn something about music by listening to the artistry that Beethoven employed in creating that music, about sound and harmony and discord and resolution of those. It speaks of the art, but it also speaks of the artist. And it speaks not just of the artist, but it speaks of us in recognizing the artistry. That something Beethoven felt is revealed in my emotions when I hear what he created. He is recreating something from within him for me to recognize and receive, and turning my attention toward what he is experiencing through this inspirational art that he shares. I know Beethoven by his music. The more I hear and the more I recognize and the more I'm stirred and the more I know him, because it resonates with something of me. And if I hear it today, it's going to say something different about me than it said when I first heard it and was more immature. It was amazing because what he was saying was increasingly complex, and I have yet to fully appreciate his art. But I do appreciate it. But as I grow, I appreciate it more. The more I know about music, the more I hear the nuances of what he did, the more I know him and the more I know me. It says something of both the artist and the audience. We're resonating together somehow. The invisible qualities of God. Paul wrote to the Romans and he said, listen, first of all, talking to the Romans, first chapter, he goes, I've heard of your faith and just your love of God and love of the saints, so I can't wait. I've seen how God's working in you and through you. I've heard all about it, so I can't wait to come and tell you the gospel. I can't wait to do it. Yes, Michael, Beethoven went deaf. Oh, okay. I got to go backwards here a little bit. Asking about him being deaf, because this is important. What Beethoven communicated in his fifth and sixth symphonies, which were written not exactly simultaneously, but overlapped, right? He started six before he finished five. He wrote those two symphonies, bum, 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 bum. That's Beethoven's fifth symphony. Bum, 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 bum. He wrote that famous, impactful thing out of frustration that he himself could not hear as well as he could. Bum, 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 bum. Over and over and over and over, this major chord. Over and over, we hear it in that simple melody that has impacted history, because he is trying to hear something, and his frustration in wanting to hear it and wanting to express it comes out in the music. But he also has this beautiful, calming, resolving, inspiring sixth symphony in him at the same time. So in the fifth, he's frustrated. In the sixth, he's calling us to, it's literally called the Pastoral Symphony. He's calling us to this bucolic, calming, serene, inspiring, beautiful. So you've got this conflicted anger in this beautiful serenity, being expressed at the same time. He had to write the fifth and the sixth together because he's both frustrated and inspiring. He's wanting you to hear the beauty and he's wanting you to hear the conflict, and they're happening at the same time. And amazingly, as he went through that conflict and expressed that through his gifting, he then afterwards wrote 7, 8, and 9, some of the greatest music of all time, completely deaf. And he was going deaf writing the fifth and sixth. It's amazing. It's amazing. He had to do them both together because he's appreciating the beauty of what he is able to do and express, while at the same time frustrated that he is losing his hearing, and expressing himself is getting harder. So you hear all of the conflict and frustration of Beethoven's fifth. It's a war in his soul. And at the same time as he's writing the fifth symphony, he's writing the sixth symphony, calling us to pause, inviting us to Selah, taking in the grandeur of a countryside scene, the wonder of nature. These two very different emotional expressions that he is working through at the same time. And after going through that process and going completely deaf, he wrote some of the most beautiful music in history. I mean, Beethoven's Ninth, it is one of the most beautiful, grandiose, God-focused symphonic works of all time, his last symphony. So Paul, when he was writing to Rome, said, I can't wait to come and tell you about the gospel that you've already embraced, to be these wonderful saints who are loving God and loving his people. I've heard all about your love, and I'm calling you saints, and I recognize that you're in Christ, and I can't wait to come and teach you about the gospel that is already true for you, but you don't yet know. Paul is wanting, through writing this incredible letter, wanting to express something that is true of him, that he knows is true of them, that they don't yet know. He wants to hold them up and show them themselves relative to the gospel, so that something that he knows of him and of them can be expressed as this beautiful truth in their own lives. And then he comes, and so to do that, he has to say, look, all of the Jews and everyone that's not a Jew are both saved through Christ. And this is this incredible mystery that's revealed to us now that was missing before. When the Jews knew something of God and God was using them to make himself known in the world, he created this incredible tribe of people to express himself through. And then what he brought through the generations and the prophets and the history and the poetry and the judges and all of it, this whole history of Israel, what he was expressing about himself, came to this beautiful culmination, this ultimate climax in the person of Christ. And it wasn't ever about the Jewish nation. It was always something he was expressing through the Jewish nation, through everybody, because both Jew and Gentile know God and recognize him in creation. And he's clarifying who he is and his love through us, through the Jewish history and through the Pentateuch, through the law, through the prophets, through the poetry, through the history. He's making himself known, pointing to Christ, so that as Christ now has been revealed to us, we might all know our need of him and receive him. All of us, Jew and Gentile, brought together, united in Christ, all needing him, all knowing that we must have him, all knowing we're not good enough without him, that we wouldn't walk through the museum of life and history with our eyes closed, denying the creator of all that is created, and that we might know him and we might be resolved like a conflicting chord in the person of Jesus Christ. It's like throughout all of history until Christ came, the dissonance of history is getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And we're all going, the law is beautiful, but I can't live up to it. And the history of God is beautiful, but it says that we're lacking what only God can provide. And the conflict gets greater and greater and greater and greater. And then suddenly the culmination of all of that conflict is he who knew no sin became sin for us. And the conflict of all of creation being brought to the cross to be forgiven totally. And suddenly this amazing resolution after this moment of silence, 3 days in the grave, Selah, where we're going, oh, the conflict has overwhelmed us and the world is now still in the absence of the presence of God. What has happened? The conflict has killed us. And then the resurrection. The fullness of the resolution that all of the thickness of the dissonance of creation up to that moment was resolved in the beauty of resurrected life. Not just God, but God with us. Changed. It changed. People read the Old Testament and they go, this is horrible. Yeah, he's showing the darkness of sin and the desperation for intervention throughout history, throughout creation, making the need for God increasingly known and the absence of God in our behavior and our thinking increasingly obvious, so that the resolution of all of those things could be found in the death and resurrection of Christ. And if we let the communication of that history speak to us from God of us, then we all can, knowing we need him, receive him and find perfect eternal resolution in him, because it all speaks of him and us. The cross is the culmination of the beauty of all creation. And we're now the instruments of the resolution of his song, that everyone might find resolve in the grandeur of us. So in Romans 1:20, Paul is trying to elevate everyone seeing the need and no one being able to satisfy it themselves. And in verse 20, Romans 1:20, he says, the invisible qualities of God are made known through all of creation, so that mankind is without excuse. We can't say we don't believe there is a God, because he has created something that speaks of him as the creator. I do not presume that this randomly came together. Someone had to make it. And I actually like how they made this mug more than I like some other mugs. And I like the shape and feel and weight of other mugs, some other mugs, more than this one. Though I had this one made, I still like what someone else made and designed better than what I made and designed. It's like, oh, I like that. So I can play Beethoven's Fifth, some chords from Beethoven's Fifth on the piano, or Beethoven's Ninth on the piano, but I don't like it as much as almost anyone else I've ever heard play it. I'm not that good. But there's something in me that wants to express what is in me through something that's created and reproduce that in someone else. So Paul said that the invisible qualities of God are made known through all of creation, the creator revealing himself to an audience so that mankind is without excuse. It takes more work to ignore the creator in the midst of his creation. I am amazed by the faith of the deniers of God. I'm amazed at the faith of those who deny God. Their fervency in their denial, their desperate need to be self-sovereign is incredible to me. But it's because I've received the revelation of God through what only God can do. And so I'm in awe of the conflict and resoluteness of God deniers. It takes so much more faith to ignore the obvious. because God's screaming through the conflict of humanity, of the need for resolution that only he can, and through Christ has, brought about for us all. He makes harmony of all of our disharmony. Since the creation of the world, Paul wrote, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. He who is never made is making himself known through what he has made, so that people are without excuse. Romans 1:20. Listen, to recognize beauty is to accept an invitation of God to exalt him in his creation. Oh God, what a sunset. Oh Father, what a work of music. Oh Lord, thank you for that child's cry. There is nothing beautiful that does not speak of both the artist and the audience. So to recognize beauty is to accept that invitation from God to exalt him in his creation. When we see that creative beauty as his expression of himself, when we taste something and go, God, you have made me for this morsel of food. Chocolate, have you ever tasted really rich, complex chocolate, or maybe perfectly roasted, blended coffee? Do you think that that happened somehow by accident? That didn't just spontaneously exist. Someone has brought that about based on what they taste and want to express. And I agree with them when I drink it and go, yes, that is good. Yes, that is amazing. Yes, I do like that. That speaks of the one who made it. It's artistry. So the reason that there's chefs is because we recognize the goodness of the artistry and the skill of what they can do that I can't, but would like. They're expressing something of themselves and how they put together that dish or that coffee or that wine or that meal or that dessert. They're expressing something of themselves. That's why we always talk about the artist with the art, the chef with the meal, the winemaker with the wine, the musician with the composition. We recognize something of ourselves from what we receive from the artist. It speaks of him and it speaks of us. When we see that creative beauty as his expression, look at the sunset. That talks to me about God, but it also talks to me about me from God. When we do that, we can also see it as him sharing himself with us. I want you, God is saying, I want you to know me. I've created you for my gifts and created my gifts for you. He's both given me the eyes to see and the heart to be inspired by the sunset that he created for me to see. He's created me for his gifts, and he's created his gifts for me so that I might know him. He's sharing himself with me through that which I can see and taste and hear and feel from him. Beauty is his gift that speaks of his love to us, a divine whisper. It's a lover's call. Every single time we see the flower and smell the flower and see it fade away, we go, oh God, thank you for that moment. Thank you for that thing that I had for just an instant that teaches me both of your beauty and the fleetingness of creation. I'll take it again and again and again. I cannot recognize the beauty and deny easily its creator. It's a divine whisper, a gift, a token, a love letter, a lover's call. Beauty is an invitation to a divine dialogue because God is speaking to me, but he's speaking to me about him and me. And if I'll receive what he is sharing, then in that receptivity, I'm beginning a divine dialogue that he's creating something from me and I am appreciating him in it. Both I as the audience and he as the creator are exalted together by what he alone can do. It's an invitation to that divine dialogue. It's God saying, this is me. I am here. But even more, this is me to you. This is me for you. This is me trying to recreate in you an experience that is in me. Look at the love. Look at the divine creativeness that resonates with who you are. Creation is a love sonnet. You hear the birds chirping and you hear the wind in the pines, and you take a deep breath, and just receiving it is recognition of the divine. Either he's speaking to you of who he is and who you are because he's speaking to you of who he is, or we're just all lost. All creation can recognize him by that gift. He's saying, this is me to you and for you, and ultimately for us together, creator and audience, enjoying this expression that I want to share. God is not lacking for beauty in heaven. He has created the beauty of creation for us who cannot yet see him, have a choice to reject him, but can accept him based on what he has revealed through the created. He's both expressing himself and inviting us to recognize something of ourselves as his audience. Look how he loves me by what he is sharing with me. This is me, but it's not just me, it's me with you and for you and to you because I love you. So we see something in ourselves in recognizing the artist in his art. Beauty is often serendipitous. We stumble upon the precipice and see the beauty of the landscape. It's often serendipitous to us, but it's never by accident to him. It's often an interruption, but it's an interruption from what is of lesser value to what is of greater value. It's something exalted within our soul that is worth receiving. It is worth the interruption. It's saying this landscape or this song or the taste of this coffee, to recognize the beauty of it is of greater value than just trying to get through it all. It's elevating our thinking by inspiring our soul. Art recreates something emotionally and soulically from the artist to the audience that cannot be done any other way. Art is critical. Beauty is critical to recognizing the love of God because we do not see him apart from his createdness, creatorness in his creativeness. It speaks of us, that he would do that for us. Be interrupted by the art today. Engage in the beauty of God. That's what I was calling the message today. Engage beauty, because it's God speaking of him and us to us as only he can. Be interrupted today by the beauty of God. There's a call that is a beautiful invitation to embrace what God says, not just to you of himself, but for you from his love about you by wanting to share it with you. He's giving us value by inviting us into this divine dialogue of artistry and recognition of the artist. We could circle this all day, and we will keep going. This series that I'm going to give you a question of the day here in 2 minutes. This series this week is about divine life. It's about embracing, I call it the 3 E's or E3. It's engaging with God in his dialogue of beauty. When I recognize beauty, I'm recognizing its creator. Beauty is not an accident, though sometimes it's serendipitous. We discover it accidentally, but it's not being done accidentally. It speaks of the one who created it. So engaging beauty today is what we're talking about. And tomorrow we're going to talk about another E. We're going to talk about embracing grace. So not only is God speaking to us, but we have a role in participating in that communication. And that's what I call carpe charis. It mixes languages, but it's the Latin for embrace or seize or take hold of, and the Greek for grace. But I like it because it's alliterated, right? So carpe charis, embrace or seize or take hold of grace. It's embracing his grace. The way that we engage in beauty is by accepting and engaging in the dialogue with God, receiving what only God can do for us and to us and through us, recognizing something in us because we are part of that creation that speaks of him. All creation speaks of the glory of God. Day after day, it pours forth its speech without word of God who created it. And if all creation does that, then you, as the pinnacle of creation, say more about who God is than anything else in creation. You, my friend, are his masterpiece. Ephesians 2:10 says, the mountains are beautiful, but you are his masterpiece. The sunset's incredible. He created the sunset for me and me for the sunset. What love of a father to a child. But my friend, you speak of who he is more than anything else that he's created, which says an awful lot about how loved you are, which says an awful lot about the lover of your soul. And then the last day, so we're talking about engaging in the beauty of God today. We're talking about tomorrow, embracing his grace. How do we participate in that invitation of beauty? How do we embrace, seize, take hold of, carpe charis, the grace of God? And then ultimately, how do we express who he is and what he's done in us? How do we become the music? How do we become the instrument? How do we become the sonnet? Paul said, you are my letter. What's he saying? He's saying that I have expressed something to you, but what you're becoming says something of me having expressed it to you, that you've received it and taken it and done something with it. So we don't just embrace the beauty and or engage in the beauty and embrace the grace, but ultimately we express that truth in love. We make an impact by how we have been impacted. We become participants in the divine symphony, the divine canvas of God. We are the masterpiece. We become the instruments. We collectively become the divine symphony. So that's what we're talking about this week. Hope you'll be here tomorrow as we talk about what our role is. Today, the beauty is God's invitation to this divine dialogue of creation. And tomorrow we get to respond. What do we do in response to that divine dialogue of his beauty, that it even exists? That I can taste an infinite number of flavors and see an infinite number of colors and experience an infinite number of waves and birdsong and wind through the trees tells me that there is something of the infinite. Even though my days are finite, my perceptions are finite, and my ability is finite, I know what is infinite. It is God beyond creation because of what he's created in creation. I have seen that which is infinite without seeing. I haven't seen every color. Tomorrow there will be a new one in the sunset. I haven't heard every bird, but I recognize that there's an infinite bird song in creation. I haven't heard every breeze through every forest, but I recognize by the infinite reality of the creation that I am part of something bigger than creation. I know something of the infinite qualities, the power, the sovereignty of God by his creation, of which you and I are his pinnacle. We are his masterwork. So there you go. First, we have to recognize that there takes a composer for the song. And if we don't, then we're just kidding ourselves. And a lot of people are. And then we recognize our part, if he's showing us his artistry, then we get to participate as his audience. But if we participate as an audience, recipients, carpe caris, seizing the grace, then he invites us to participate in the symphony. We're going to talk about how that works. Here's question of the day for you. I think I may have this to put on the screen for you guys. Question of the day. How is God whispering you? As you go throughout your day, how is God whispering to you of himself? Of his love for you? Of his divine nature? What does his creation and your experiences and the way someone loves someone else can be speaking to me of the artistry of God? It's beautiful to see. Have you ever seen a couple in their 80s or 90s and they're just holding hands and helping each other through life? That's inspirational to us because it's beautiful. How is God today? Think about it all day long. How is he whispering to you about him, about his love, about his divine nature? And what does his divine whisper say that he would share it with you? What does it say about you to him? Take a photo of that or write it down. Make today about seeking and finding and engaging in the beauty of God and his love and you as the recipient of it today. That all of his gifts don't just speak of him, they speak of you as the recipient of those gifts. He didn't just make it look how awesome he is, but he made it for you. What value does that give you? That he's inviting you to engage with him in this divine dialogue by his creation. And in that, my friends, this week and today and right now, you can know him more. That's why it all is existing, that I can choose to engage with him whom I cannot see, who makes himself known by what is seen. I dare you to fall into his grace by faith and embrace the reality of him whom we cannot see because of what we do see. It's an invitation. If God showed up in all his glory physically in front of you today, that's not an invitation. That's just a statement. I am. But he shared that statement indirectly with us so that we might receive him as our reality, as our creator. Because once he shows up in all of his glory, there's no choice. There's no invitation. There's just the reality. Right now, we get to choose to embrace who he reveals himself to be so that we might engage relationally with him. There's no choice when there's no faith. There's no relationship when there's no choice. So he's inviting us into this divine dialogue by his expressions of beauty for us to receive something about him through it and something about us because we're the recipients of it. So again, how is God whispering to you today about himself, about his love, about his divine nature? And what does that divine whisper say to you about you as his recipient, as his goal? So you can know him more, you can grow in grace, and ultimately you can go love others like crazy by participating in his divine work. Jessica, you're so right. Oh, how he loves us. Have a wonderful day, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow.